Guys, and welcome back to the ASTV Soccer Show. I'm Mahith Gamage. It's my first show in a while. I've been pretty busy the last couple of months, but I am back and shining some spotlight on some local quality soccer provider. With the AK Soccer Academy, I'm joined by Anisha Kinnarath, who is a technical director there. Anisha, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
No problem.
So you guys run an academy out of Winnipeg, the AK Soccer Academy. There's a lot of academies popping up these days across, Manitoba as we're looking to, we broke down the boundaries, as many people heard, and now this is sort of the way that we're moving forward. Can you tell me a little bit about the academy and what you guys do?
Yeah, so we are a family-owned soccer academy out in East St. Paul. We started about 3 to 4 years ago, and we were just working with a few local kids, including kids in my brother's age group because he's 12, and that's kind of where we started getting involved. And then we also own like the Skylight Soccer Complex out in East St. Paul. So we were always running our little striker program. So it was just like 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. But eventually the kids they got older, and the parents came to us and said, like, is there something that we can continue to do? Can we stay with you guys as coaching us, and how do we grow? So from when we sat down with the parents and said, like, we want to stay with you, we decided to continue to grow the academy that we were running inside our complex. And then we started with 50 kids. And then as each year went on, we just continuously grew. And I think right now we have about over 300 members in our own academy. So it just organically grew, just with the product that we've been putting out on the field, the coaching staffs that we've been able to have help us out. And yeah, it's been pretty crazy the last 2 years. And luckily, just this recent year, like during that time, we were also working on getting our sanctioning through MSA, just doing everything appropriately, making sure everything's run properly. And we're following all the rules. And, luckily we did it all. And now we're one of Manitoba's quality soccer providers.
And what does that mean now that you guys are sort of accepted and notified by the MSA? Like what has changed from before to after the certification you guys got from them?
So one of the biggest things is that we have all the rights, similar to all the clubs, basically. So if you look at like a branch of the governing bodies in Manitoba, MSA is your head one, but above them is the CSA. So if you're under MSA, then you're one of the you have the rights of all the clubs that are around, basically. So for us, if we want if we join them, have to apply and put an application through and then get accepted through there. But if we were no longer, or if we weren't a sanctioned academy through MSA, we wouldn't have the rights to enter WISA, or we would have less authority to play against all the other clubs within the city. So it gives us those rights to be asking for exhibition games if we want them, or entering the league, so that the kids can get more competition, travel, go do tournaments outside of the province, inside the province. And also one of the biggest things is the MSA Cup, which is the cup that you play here as a provincial championship. And the winner of that will go to wherever is the hosting province and play against all the other provinces. So it's pretty cool. It's exciting. So basically we're like one of the clubs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very cool. And like I said before, like all the academies now are getting certified by MSA, which I think is great. And it's definitely a step forward because we saw that in other provinces for a while, and it was something that we were missing here. And a lot of people were fighting for this change and for, to go down the sort of academy route. And, now we're getting it, which is great. Mm-hmm. But Anisha, so what sort of like programs do you guys run, like specifically? Like obviously soccer programs, but like what specifically, and like for what age groups and genders?
So it's all co-ed. Everything that we do is co-ed. We have a mini league that we run. So it's kind of a replacement to Timbits. So it's a little bit more competitive where they play against each other. Then from there, we run our own house league. So that's more focused on player development. And we also run that in a co-ed division. So we do a lot of, so whoever is members of our academy are also members of MSA. Everything is legit, and everyone, like, we set up teams that are all even and equal, and they play against each other once a week. And then we practice based on per age group. So we have from 5 years old up till 14 is our age group, and we have a league for pretty much all of them. And then 2 of our premier teams are playing in WISA right now.
Okay, so like that's kind of a crucial age, like the 5 to 14. That's kind of, you know, like that's when they pretty much learn everything, right? Like that's like as we say, grassroots, and that's a very crucial age in development in soccer. So like what kind of like coaching do you guys have? Like, is it just like your family coaching, or do you guys have any other coaches? And
so my dad is the entry level director of the academy. I'm the technical director of the academy, and the coaches that we have are either parents or just volunteers that come in. But we do a lot of screening based on who is able to coach. So we have a few younger coaches that we have that were former players that come and coach our mini program, especially because, like you said, that's the most crucial age group, and we don't want them to learn bad habits before you expand, right? So we always focus on basics, and then we have a very strict platform because we believe that like fundamentals is the most important for like the coaches, and we don't like when coaches we like them to have their creativity, but sometimes we have to kind of bring them back and be like, you know what, these are 6 years old kids. They just need to learn how to dribble. They need to learn how to run with the ball. They need the coordination. They need all these basic skills before they can even think about passing. Right?
Yeah.
So we always try and like make sure that we have coaching meetings pretty regularly just to make sure that everyone's following the guidelines and making sure that they know. But the benefit of the coaches that we have is either they played at a high level or they've coached at a high level. But majority of the coaches we have were players previously. So they know that they understand where we're coming from. Because I think sometimes when you get a parent that doesn't know anything, it kind of hinders the progress, right? And then the development of the players, which is a big thing, especially when you go and you look at 7, 8-year-olds.
Yeah, I noticed that like at like recreational level, like rec level, there's a lot of parents that have a big involvement in coaching. And while, you know, it's great that they want to get involved and everything like that, there's definitely a benefit to having, you know, actual certified coaches or ex-players teaching your kids, because like, I mean, I played on a rec team when I was younger, and it was very bland, very basic, you know, soccer stuff. They just set up the cones and just dribble through the cones, and then nothing was said, right? If you're doing bad, if you're doing good, you don't really get much feedback, because like if you're a parent and you're not really a coach or a former player, I mean, there's not much you can really say, and there's not much you're gonna know what to say, right? So I think it's great that you guys are taking that pathway to coaching, and yeah, like again, it's just the academy sort of system that sets it up really nicely for the young players. But you know, so you said that it goes from age 5 to 14, right?
Yep.
So what happens after that for the players?
Well, they continue. Like our oldest age group that we have right now is 14, but they would continue going through. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But
So,
right
like,
now, so then like next year it'd be 5 to 15, because then our kids would grow.
oh, I see. Okay, I understand.
So like the oldest age group we have right now is
Right
14.
now, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So then it'll just keep going up and up.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. So then when would you cap it then?
Usually it's 18 years old, because then they go off to university, or some kids get scholarships, they go out about and play men's and all that. So the main thing, and you see it a lot in Manitoba sports and Winnipeg sports, and I've sat down and talked to Hector about this too, is just retaining the athletes. Because by 16 they're quitting.
Yeah.
So how do you retain them? Like, what do you do to keep them? Because you go into we noticed in the WISA league is like for the boys side, it's all combined. It's 15, 16, 17. When I was growing up, there'd be a strong 15 group, there'd be a strong 16 group, and there'd be a strong 17 group, right?
Yeah.
So we have to find a way, and I think as a community, like as a soccer community as well, is how do we find a way to keep the players, because they're dropping out way too early.
Yeah, that's been the big problem, I think, in recent years. Like, we have a very high like involvement rate at like young ages, and then once they hit like their teenage years, it just sort of fades away, it peters out, and that's been a big problem. So I mean, what are the solutions to that then, do you think?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I think making sure that there's a good league for them to play in,
Yeah.
that it's competitive, like making sure that proper coaching staff is there, because I think it's different with girls and stuff too. Like, there's a lot of emotions and stuff that get involved. And then like, I know as playing, and once we were 16, there was a lot of girls that were like, hey, I'm not playing anymore. And just they wanted to go off and go live their life. And I think guys, the same thing. Like, they'd just be like, I just kind of want to go off and play other sports or go hang out with my friends, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But if you have something to continuously play, whereas it's competitive, you're going there, there's a challenge all the time, then that's where it keeps them drawn in. And then for us, like, our goal with our older age groups, so with our boys and girls programs, is how do we not just focus on Winnipeg, just playing in Winnipeg, is how do we take them elsewhere, play in different tournaments? Because I went to university at North Dakota State, so I have my previous university coaches all around. So I call them up and I say, what are some good showcases that we can go to? And they're like, okay, when you're 15, 16, take them to this showcase, take them to that one. So it's about how do you build a solid team that it's not just about focusing on Winnipeg or Manitoba, is how do you take them somewhere so that they can get the exposure elsewhere, right? And I think that's how you get them to continue to play.
Right. And do you think like the growth of soccer in this country is going to benefit that? Because I mean, it's still small steps, but there are a lot of changes lately. Obviously, with the Canadian Premier League coming in, our women's and men's teams have both been doing relatively well on their own respective scales. We got good men's and females players now at good teams in Europe. Is that something that's gonna benefit the not just the dropout rates, but just how good our players can become?
I think it would be, like, just even after seeing Alphonso Davies' success, I think that even motivates kids a little bit more. Be like, oh wow, someone from Canada was able to do it, right? And even like, I remember growing up, I always told my dad, I'm like, I want to play for Man United, but I never had a team, right? There was never that goal for me to. Even when I graduated university, my coaches were like, okay, do you want to go pro? And I was like, why would I go play in? Right? But then now you see all these Premier Leagues, now they have women's team. So then it's like, oh, now that's more appealing to the younger generation as well. It'd be like, wow, I have something to strive for. Because back in the day, there was only so many women's league or professional women's teams. Like, even now, there's a professional women's team in Toronto. They just opened that one.
Yeah.
So now there's that more opportunity, and I think that's what's going to grow soccer in this country.
I agree.
What grows soccer? I'm sure getting more academies in the province is going to help actually develop the province in itself.
Yeah. Anisha, we'll take a quick commercial break, but we will be right back, guys, with more from Anisha from the AK Soccer Academy. Hey guys, welcome back to the ASTV Soccer Show. I'm Mahith Gamage. I'm still with Anisha Kinnarath from the AK Soccer Academy. We were just talking about the growth of the game in Canada and how we can keep players in the game. And Anisha, I want to mention to you that, like, you mentioned Alphonso Davies and how he just won the Champions League, and he came from Canada. He came from Edmonton. He was a refugee. which we have a lot of now. I mean, not just refugees, but just immigrants in general who are, taking their footsteps into the game now. And he also came through an academy in Edmonton, growing through before he went to Whitecaps' youth program. So that there is just a good example of what an academy can do for a player, even in that age group, because that was when he was in the age group that your academy runs, 5 to 15. And there's going to be more players that we can't afford to have slip through the cracks.
Agreed.
Yeah, and the thing about the immigrant communities is that, like I always say this because obviously I'm from an immigrant community, and I noticed that when you start getting to like the higher and higher levels of the game, there's less and less. It's just less and less people from these communities that are being involved at the higher levels. But then when I go and play, a pickup game at the park, everyone there is from all these countries in Africa and all these countries in Asia, all these countries from South America. And then once you get to the higher levels, there's nobody like that there anymore, which is so interesting to me because now it's just trying to figure out how can we get these people involved. And, does it have to do with money? Does it have to do with, the opportunities? Well, like, what does it have to do with?
So it's funny that so back in the day, I used to play for Portage Trail Soccer Club. It's no longer a club. And my dad was the technical director of that club. And now the way you say like the immigrant and that community, it is definitely underserved. And what we used to do back in the day when I used to be out there is a lot of the ERCOM kids would be a part of the program. So we used to help subsidize a lot of the kids that were a part of ERCOM, to the point where kids would show up to my house knocking on our door, asking my dad to put them on a team. So we did a lot of fundraising and a lot of support for that community. And I think that's what's lacking, because we've been out of the game for a while, and St. Charles took over that academy. And I know that club, and I know they've been doing a good job of trying to retain that, but there is a lot of income loss, and it's about how do we fundraise properly. We've been in communications with the newcomers about potential training sessions and stuff that we can do for them, and how do we go about it. But I think that's the biggest thing. And for me, like, my dad's a refugee. He's from Thailand. He went through it all, and he knows. He said, what, sport is the main thing to prevent kids getting into trouble.
Yeah.
Like, when you have that sense of community, when you have that sense of friendship around you, you're more unlikely to go out and search for it elsewhere. You need that sense of structure. You need all of that, right?
Yeah.
And I think if we need to tap into these different settings, because ultimately, like, one, you're helping a kid grow, because soccer is not just about winning. It's about growth. It's about growth, individual, right? It's how do you learn to lose? How do you learn to win? What do you do with success, right? How do you work as a group? How do you come out of adversity and all those different things? It's not just about playing the sport. And like, we have in our academy, we have a few were or they're Syrian refugees, and we just found of how do we subsidize the fees, whether it be through, there's a few supports. So there's kids sport, there's Jumpstart, and then we would just reduce the amount that they would have to pay, because it's not about money, especially for us. We're like, it's not about income, it's about the kids.
Yeah, and that's very important. Again, going back to Davies for the third time, the academy he was in was actually free, which I haven't looked into it too much, so I don't know how it is free. But like, if his family had to pay thousands of dollars for him to get to that level, he wouldn't have gotten to that level. Like, there's no chance, because you just don't have that kind of money when you're like 90% of the time, if you're an immigrant or refugee family, you won't have the funds for that, or you'll put it into something else if you do have it, right? I mean, like, it's high risk stuff if you're putting all your money into one basket like that. But if you don't have to pay, then if Davies' family didn't have to pay, right? So it makes a big difference. Then he had the chance to go, and it was also like low risk for the family, right? If you're not spending thousands, and it's that kind of risk that that stops families from putting their kids in at these higher and higher levels, because if it doesn't pay off, then what can you really? It's very difficult to talk about this, because it's different for every family, and it's always different, like in different generations.
Some of the poorest kids are come from, or that have the most skills. So
exactly, yeah,
trade-off, right? And that's like, if you look at Ronaldo, like he had no money. He was a small little, and he took that. Like, even I was watching Sadio Mane's documentary, and same thing, he had nothing.
Yeah,
they don't have anything, and it's that one club that's going to take the chance on the kid because they can see that, okay, you know what, this kid is talented, but how do we create an environment for all these kids? And then how do you bridge them within your academy, right? There has to be a better structure, because like you see it, like there's talented kids everywhere. You go play at Green Space, like it's packed with a bunch of kids playing, and they're all talented.
Yeah, there's absolutely talent everywhere. I mean, any park you go to, you'll see kids playing pickup games, and they're playing at a high level just with their friends, kicking around. And all those, a lot of the pro soccer players, like the top players, all come from like poor backgrounds, especially the ones from like third world countries, like especially the South American players. You'll see a lot of stories about them as children, and them not being able to afford boots and stuff like that, but somehow they make it because those countries kind of have systems set up for those players to make it. Even though they're third world countries, that's kind of their culture, right, is the game and playing the game, and then they try their best to develop these players regardless of the money. But here it's a little bit different, and I think in first world countries in general, it's just a little bit different, where sports just cost a ton of money, and oftentimes you have to be rich and talented, not just talented to make it. Where in countries that live and breathe the game, you don't have to be rich to make it. So that's something we definitely have to improve on here, and I think there are big steps being taken to prevent that. And your academy and other academies that are similar are helping the cause, of course, like you mentioned, which is great. But yeah, I think this is something that I've been talking to a lot of people about, because I actually noticed, like I said before, when I go to the park and play, it's a lot of immigrant kids, a lot of immigrant, people from immigrant communities. And then when I go, like if I go watch like a Valor game, or I'll talk to some fans, they're all, none of them are from those communities, which is so interesting to me, as in, they're not, either they're not getting involved in the higher levels of the game, or they're not really like paying attention to it, or whatever. So I think it's important to get them more involved, like even if it's, not just playing, but just being involved in the community, and, even coaching and all that stuff. I think it's very important. And I do think we're taking good steps towards that. So
yeah, and it's one of those things is, how do you make it accessible? Like I have a campaign like on our social media about parents, if they no longer need cleats, if they're just being thrown around in the garage collecting dust or shin pads or whatever, because they're all going to grow, right? And they're just going to sit there, or they're going to throw it out. I take them, and then if I see a kid with no cleats on coming to play, I switch them. I give them a pair of cleats. I give them shin pads. Like that way, you know what? It's at least less cost that they have to think about. They don't have to worry about. And then we train and we get bigger pair of shoes, because that's how you try. You have to make soccer accessible. Yeah. It's a cheap sport. It shouldn't be that it's the ball and a pair of cleats. Yeah. It shouldn't be as expensive. But unfortunately, field time's expensive, that's the biggest thing that kills us, I think, because the indoor to play in these facilities costs a lot. Yeah. So with these different clubs, we have to charge a lump sum in order to be able to pay those fees. Yeah. And then you have staff that you have to pay and all those different things. So it's difficult. Yeah, and it sucks because half our year you can't play outdoors, right? Exactly. So that's the biggest problem that we face here. But anyways, the reason we're doing this over a call rather than in person is because of COVID. And how has that changed your approach at the academy? I mean, did you have to cancel events, and are you kind of getting back into it now? So we started, I think it was in July. Normally would have started in May. So we started pretty late. We just extended our season. But it was challenging in the beginning because we have so many kids. So we had to stagger We had to be at about 50% of our capacity.
Right.
So we're staggering all the practices, making sure everyone was using the amount of space that they needed. But otherwise, like a few players didn't come back just because of the fear, which was totally fine, and we respected that. But we had to make sure, you know, the hardest part is the equipment management, making sure everybody listens and is not playing with the ball with their hands or picking up equipment and not sanitizing and doing all that stuff. But also like standing too close because they're all buddies and they all want to hang out and they want to talk and tend to get really, really close with each other when they're talking. So that's the biggest thing. But I think our biggest limitation coming up soon is the indoor season, because we have to make sure, you know, everything's done accordingly because it's indoors. So what we're planning on doing is just making sure everything's 15 minutes apart, running about half, so only 2 teams practice at a time. Parents probably not going to be too involved in the facility, and then 15 minutes, clean up, sanitize everything, and do it again. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be pretty tedious, but I think together we're going to get through this, hopefully.
Yeah, and just to know that everybody else is going through the same thing, right? It's not just like it's not just you and like your academy going through it. Like every single club and every academy is struggling with the same thing. So like it's important to work together. And I saw that MSA had released like some not just guidelines, but like training, like exercises and like drills and stuff, like socially distanced drills that you can do, which I think is great. And like has the actual on-field stuff changed much for you guys?
Just making sure everything's distanced. Like, well, now because they're able to play. So initially we were doing a lot of just basic techniques. We were passing, moving, you know, doing a lot of fitness, getting that back into shape because a couple of kids gained some weight over COVID because they were just playing video games and eating lots of junk food. But so we did a lot of initially just running, getting fit, working on basic technique. And then once we got the approval to start doing like small-sided scrimmages, we did that. And so it wasn't very big changes just because they're just falling in a line. And then I don't know, it wasn't too crazy, but now we just have to make sure still, like, you know what, okay, just these small things of make sure you have your hand sanitizer, make sure you're cleaning your ball, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing that. So we put a lot of responsibility on our coaches.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that video game stuff. I mean, like after like the few months of staying inside and then we went outside, like I don't know when it was that everybody started going out like moderately again, maybe like around May or something. And then we played like a game at the park, and like after 5 minutes in the hot sun, I was just gassed. Like I could not believe it. Like it's just you just don't really notice how much it changes in those few months that you don't really do much. But yeah. Anyways, Anisha, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It was great to talk to you about your academy.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, guys. So if you have any extra cleats lying around, you can contact Anisha at the AK Soccer Academy, and you can give those to her. Any cleats, shin pads that you might have lying around. But anyways, this was the ASTV Soccer Show. We will have another show next week. I will figure out the guest later, but I'll let you guys know. But anyways, thank you so much for watching.